Hi guys, I'm just starting recording. It is 20 past 11 on Monday the 21st, and this is the news headlines. I would do better if I just show you what's going on. Here's your news headlines. Putin orders troops into eastern Ukraine. I didn't think this would happen. I said this wouldn't happen. Let's just see what's going on. Let's go over here. I'll be doing a lot more tomorrow, but here's the summary. Russian President Vladimir Putin recognises the two breakaway regions of Ukraine controlled by Russian-backed separatists. These are the ones that are self-declared independent republics. He's recognised them informally for some time. Under decrees signed by Putin, Russian troops will perform what he describes as peacekeeping functions in Luhansk and Donetsk, raising fears that troops could soon cross the border. So, yeah, Putin said Ukraine has no history of being a true nation. Well, if you listen to her Panmo radio the other night, where I analysed Ollie and what he said, let me just find it here. Let me just find the actual. Here we go. Just listen to this show, program 453 of the Panmo show on Panmo radio. Bowler Hatman debrief, where I go into my debate with Bowler Hatman, and I actually read a document written by President Putin a couple of years ago. Well, that's actually not what he says. I'm going to listen to the entire speech. I'll do it sometime tomorrow because it's getting quite late now. I'm going to have to go to bed soon. In the UK, PM Boris Johnson says the move will violate Ukraine's sovereignty and is a very dark sign. The head of the NATO Defensive Alliance, meanwhile, said it would erode peace efforts in the region. Several airlines, including Air France and Lufthansa, have suspended flights over Ukraine over invasion fears. After what happened to Malaysia Airlines, which is suspicious, I think, I'm surprised they haven't done that before. Anyway, I'll go back to display capture. There we go. Let's just go through these news stories from the beginning, because when did this start? Let's have a look. There we go, down we go, page 1 of 5. Oh, there's no end to it. Here we go. When did this all kick off then? I was probably watching something else at the time. I was watching this horror thing called Apparitions. It's very good, actually. Good morning. Biden, blah-de-blah-de-blah. It doesn't start with the invasion. Russian attack not imminent, Ukraine defense minister says. Ukraine have been incredibly cool about all this, haven't they? As I said before, and as I said I didn't say it in my debate with Bowler Hatman, but I said before, talks bad, he needed to avoid war. Putin has been going to all the talks, hasn't he? Ukraine urges EU to take action. So this is, he expects decisions from the EU to impose sanctions on Russia. It seems like a mixed message there. Kremlin, no concrete plans, that's from the summit. Extraordinary meeting, Kremlin announces extraordinary meeting of Russian Security Council. Thousands of troops remain in Belarus. Kremlin dismisses kill list. That's absolute lies. What to make of the Biden-Putin talks? It must have been like watching Pinky and the Brain. Do you remember that TV series on the Cartoon Network about two mice, and one is incredibly intelligent, the other is incredibly stupid. This is where the military units are based, east of the country, Belarus, Ukraine, and it just tells you, here's the key here. Okay, we go on now. 60,000 civilians evacuated from rebel-held areas. These maybe wanted to get the people who have their citizenship out of the area. So that's a sign. At 10:20, they were planning something. Kremlin quashes hope of a diplomatic solution. It's all their fault. It's all the Russians' fault, isn't it? Yes. US-Russia summit has been agreed in principle, conditional to no Russian military exercise in Ukraine. The Kremlin poured cold water. This is the language they use. It says there are no concrete plans for Presidents Putin and Biden to meet. And now the Kremlin announced that Putin would chair an unscheduled meeting. Tensions in Ukraine already topped the agenda. I wanted to see what's evacuees thrown into limbo by Russian-backed separatists. Oh my God. Is it the Ukrainians who are evacuating then Ukrainian it must remain okay. Ukrainian airspace must remain open. Here we go again. Now we're on page 4. Let's go to the bottom because these are in reverse order. If you're just joining us, Russia set up temporary accommodation centres for people evacuated. So that's the Russians who are being evacuated. Right. Ukraine welcomes reports of the US-Russia summit. Russia has a kill list. Oh my God. They're usually Ukrainians to be killed or sent to camps. Oh my God. There's going to be a genocide. Oh my God. He's a monster. He's evil. Ah! Satellite show deployment along tree lines north and east of Belgorod. The Donbass. Excuse me. There has been an increase in the fighting. Remember, there's been a war there since 2014. Now, the EU is providing Ukraine with advisory military training. As I said to Bolly, that's how the Vietnam War started. A handful of advisors, just military specialists, went over to train the South Vietnamese troops, and before you know it, it's 10 years later and 2 million people are dead. UK says Russian invasion plan has begun. The intelligence, here we go, this is Russia intends to launch an invasion. They've been saying this for weeks, though, haven't they? Cancel war, the threat. All right. This is Ukraine did not attack Donetsk and Luhansk. Sends saboteurs, shell Russian territory, shell Russian border crossings. So, well, according to Putin, there are. According to Putin, there is a welfare issue for his citizens within Ukraine. Who do we believe? So you can see tensions have been escalating for a while, yeah. And a no-fly zone has been declared by Russia over the Sea of Azov. Right, that's probably to prevent Ukrainians moving into Crimea. Rebel-held regions ask for Putin to recognise them. He has done informally for quite a while now, I think. Moscow must... Oh, right. We'll go into Putin's speech. I mean, tomorrow we'll do the full speech, but I'm just going to read a small amount of his speech here, because it's getting late at night now. We'll know more tomorrow. I'll be uploading this tomorrow at some point. I thought about doing an emergency live stream, but it is Lisa's Cry Freedom show tomorrow night. I'm not missing that. It's now 20 to 4 in the evening. Indicators point to increased numbers and readiness. President Putin still committed to an invasion. They've been saying this for weeks, haven't they? Russian security officials raise doubts. Labour offer full support to help Ukraine. I bet they do. Putin risks widespread suffering. No shit. Of course, there's always going to be suffering in war. But why is it his fault? Is it his fault? This is the question, isn't it? Russian troops within striking distance. We're leaving. Ukrainian evacuees told. Sounds like they're evacuating from both communities are evacuating from the war zone. What's the latest? Ukrainian servicemen sit on the back of a truck. This was at 5 p.m. Putin says decision on recognising the independent republics will be made today. They appealed. Let's have a look. Ukraine and the West fear. Secretary Ben Wallace tells Parliament strong cause. Blah de blah. US says it has credible information that Russian forces are creating a list of Ukrainians to be killed or sent to camps. Oh, goodness me. Do we believe all this? Oh, there we go. My dad in Kiev is not close to Russia. Not closer to... Having dad in Kiev and not closer to Russia brings peace of mind. Putin to address the nation. That's at 5:30 this evening. Putin will make an announcement, it's expected. The peace of... Okay, carry on. Putin recognises the breakaway areas of Ukraine, right. Big moment of crisis. Recognition of Donetsk and Luhansk will kill off Minsk process. That's the original peace agreement in 2014, potentially to pave way for the Russian forces to enter the Donbass. Significant test of Western resolve. The Kremlin. This is from someone else. Putin makes television address. Okay, part number 2. Let's go through these quickly. Ukraine was created by Russia. That's not. He didn't say created by Russia, and he didn't say that. I mean, well, he may have said this in this speech. He didn't say that in his original document, which I read on my Hapano show about Bolly. Sanctions. We always knew there was going to be sanctions. Lenin disadvantaged Russia. No shit, because he's the author and architect of Ukraine. Russia was robbed by Soviet Union collapse. Well, I think what he said was he describes in his document, it left thousands of people suddenly abroad. Why does the West fear this move? As Putin continues to deliver his address to the nation, it goes beyond the sanctions which the EU has threatened to impose on Russia. Western powers fear such a move could be used as a pretext for Russia to invade its eastern neighbour. That's because since 2019 Russia has issued large numbers of passports to people living in those regions. And that if the regions are recognised as independent, Russia might send troops into Ukraine's east under the guise of protecting its own citizens. Just a guise, eh? Putin attacks the Ukrainian authorities. An ominous message. NATO has turned Ukraine into a theatre of war, says Putin. But no one believes him, do they? Because the BBC tell me otherwise. Yeah. Right, here we go. It's the usual protest from Boris. UN to think about more support for Ukraine. NATO expansion raises the risk of a strike against Russia, says Putin. What does Putin say? We'll listen to the speech in a minute. NATO condemns Russia's move. Putin's parallel universe. This is going to be very biased, I'm sure, against Russia. UK set to announce sanctions on Tuesday. Oh, right. As I said, before, I mean, Russia could be an economic giant by now, on the scale of China or the USA, if it wasn't for all this. It's been, what will the EU do now? Well, we know Boris is having a meeting tomorrow at 6:30 a.m. A speech with ominous overtones. Russian troops will perform peacekeeping functions in rebel-held areas. Swift and firm response needed to Kremlin decrees. Right. Russian recognition of UK breach. Let's hear what the old man has to say then.
This is plainly in breach of international law. It's a violation, a flagrant violation of the sovereignty and integrity of Ukraine. It is a repudiation of the Minsk process and the Minsk agreements, and I think it's a very ill omen and a very dark sign. And it certainly does not seem to me that it's certainly an indication, yet another indication, that things are moving in the wrong direction in Ukraine. The UK will continue to do everything we can to stand by the people of Ukraine with a very robust package of sanctions, as you know, fortifying the eastern flank of NATO in all the ways that we have, but also being one of the few countries to have given the Ukrainians the defensive, I stress defensive, weaponry that we think is appropriate to their needs. And we will continue to think about what more we can do to support Ukraine in what is clearly a very, very dark and difficult time.
Oh, shut up. There we go. Germany and France condemn. Oh, here he is. All right. Now, I'm going to have to read the subtitles out to you because you may not be able to read them. He says, in this connection, I've made this long since overdue decision. Immediately to recognize the independence and sovereignty of the Donetsk People's Republic and the Luhansk People's Republic.
Прошу Федеральное собрание Российской Федерации
I asked the Federal Assembly to support this decision
поддержать это решение, а затем и ратифицировать договоры о дружбе
and ratify the Treaty on Friendship and Mutual Assistance with both republics. I'll watch the entire speech because he actually apparently spoke for over an hour. So.
и взаимопомощи, кто захватил и удерживает власть в Киеве.
Of those who seized power in Kiev,
Мы требуем незамедлительно прекратить боевые действия.
we demand they immediately cease military combat action.
В противном случае вся ответственность
If they do not, the entire responsibility
за возможное продолжение кровопролития будет
for possible continuation of bloodshed will be completely and
целиком и
absolutely
полностью на совести правящего на территории Украины
on the conscience of the ruling regime, in Kiev.
режима.
Okay, as we carry on here. Turkish MFA announcements regarding travel security situations. Turkey advised citizens to leave Ukraine. Biden promises Ukraine president he'll respond swiftly and decisively. Oh, yes. As soon as he's got his adult nappy on. Liz Truss. Following Russia's latest assault on Ukrainian sovereignty, I spoke to Joseph Borrell, and we agree UK and EU will coordinate to deliver swift sanctions against Putin's regime and stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine. Yeah. So he hasn't actually deployed the troops yet. The UK and EU agreed to coordinate swift sanction against Russia. Oh, for goodness sake. You see, this essentially going back on Brexit, isn't it? It's this military union that Caroline Stevens used to talk about. This raises fear of a major military escalation. Urgent UN Security Council meeting. Boris Johnson to chair Cobra meeting 6:30 tomorrow morning. It's now 22 to 56. So Putin's rebel speech. Oh, we heard that. We'll go through the whole thing tomorrow. That's just a summary. We could send you more defensive weapons. UK tells Ukraine. Defensive, I think, is a euphemism for offensive. Melanie Joly. Canada strongly condemns President Putin's recognition. Oh, right. So that's it. A key moment for Ukraine, how its allies respond. Ukraine Ambassador Vadim Pristaliko says he believes Russians are already entering his country. When a nuclear nation calls your nation a historic mistake, you have to be worried. Here we are. Rebel-held territories in eastern Ukraine are quick facts. We've been through that on previous videos. Okay, so now we are. That's 22:28. It's now 22:38. Which a quick refresh. Anything new? No. Just go back to the headlines. Putin orders troops into eastern Ukraine. Well, what he actually says is he didn't actually order them. From what I gather, the actual troops haven't been ordered in there yet. He's just recognized these republics, and he now has the option of using force to defend his citizens within those republics, which he regards as Russian territory. Russia recognizes Ukraine's separatist regions. There we go. And here's, you can pause and read that if you want. These are the areas we're talking about here in Ukraine. Analysis by Sarah Rainsford. I think we'll go into more of these tomorrow. But I'll call it a night there. I won't upload this just yet. I'll upload it tomorrow when I've recorded some more. I just wanted to get my initial thoughts on the ground. I mean, I was going to do, like I said, there's going to be no live stream tomorrow. I need to, I wouldn't be fair on Lisa. But I'm going to, I'll upload this tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to go to, I'm going to have to go to bed soon, but in the morning we'll wake up on a different world. Oh, at some point, of course, Putin probably will now send the troops into those regions in what he sees to defend his citizens from Ukrainian and globalist aggression, and what the globalists and Ukrainian government, which is now, the Ukrainian government is not appealing for calm anymore, it seems, is going to talk about the need to protect their sovereignty, their sovereign territory. Night, everyone. Okay, guys, it's me again. I'm back. It's just gone 20 past 5. I've been home from work only about half an hour, but the world is still here. Nuclear war hasn't broken out. I'm just going to go through some of the news that's happened since. Do remember the background links, which I've talked about, and I'll go basically from where I was last night. I covered the bit where I've been scrolling down on this rolling news feed. The bit where Canada's going to impose sanctions, which they were, of course, and this is from Sarah Rainsford, a woman from BBC Eastern Europe correspondence in Kiev. Why is it? It's spelled K-Y-E-V. It's Kiev, not Kiev. It used to be K-I-E-V. Now they've changed their spelling. I don't know why that is, but somber, worried and angry is the mood here in Ukraine today. Well, never used to be, did it? I mean, the Ukrainians were the calm people. But Zelensky's having a meeting with the Security Council, blah, blah, blah. They're extremely worried, calling on Ukraine's allies in the West to stop what they see as an almost unstoppable Russian advance. This is Russia testing the resolve of the West. This is a key moment as far as Ukraine is concerned in terms of how its allies respond. That's burst everyone, isn't it? Oh, this is the Ukraine's ambassador to the UK, Vladimir. We did that last night, didn't we? Now, this is the map of the area. Basically, that's Ukraine there. In this box, you have Luhansk and Donetsk. These blue bits are the annexed, they are the separatist-held areas which have declared themselves independent republics called the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics. They proclaimed their independence in 2014. There they are celebrating, waving Russian flags. No nation. These were unrecognised states until Putin. The reason all this fuss is broken out is because Putin's formally recognised them as legitimate nation states. Moscow has denied all allegations of interfering with the rebels during the last, nearly 8 years of war. It wouldn't surprise me if Russia had actually supplied the rebels with arms and money, supplies, things like that. In 2014 and 15, peace agreements were signed. That's the Minsk ones, and they failed to stop the fighting completely. Now, their people have been evacuated in both directions, as we discussed last night. Lots of Russians have moved from this area into Russia, whereas lots of Ukrainians have moved from these areas, not just within these held areas, but in the rest of Donetsk and Luhansk, westwards into the rest of Ukraine. Yeah, as many as 14,000 people have died. Oh dear. Can the EU maintain unity over Russia's sanctions? Well, I think if anyone in the EU is now so cucked that they're, they haven't left the EU by now. I don't see them rebelling against Brussels, do you? French President Macron pronounced NATO as brain dead not long ago. Oh dear, just imagine how different it would be if Le Pen were president now in France. I mean, I think I'm looking forward to April, actually, because that's when there's the new French presidential election. And if they rig it again so that Macron is in and Le Pen can't get in, or the other guy, Eric Zemmour, if they rig it again, then I think that something's going to happen. Something big's going to happen, and I'm going to be covering it. I want to be there to see it. But it's interesting to think about like this, that Ollie, Bowler Hat Man. I mean, the link in the description box is to the radio show I did with Ollie, and it is tempting just simply to go through everything I did on that radio show again, but I can't keep doing that just because you guys, some of you don't want to click links. It takes 2 seconds. I did a long feature which covers everything, and the most important, you only have to read one very important bit at the moment, but you might want to read the rest of it because it's basically my response to Ollie, or another response to him. But it could be the way of interpreting this, and again, this goes back to the Kellogg-Briand Pact, which basically lays out the rules for war. The Kellogg-Briand Pact stated that wars are only justified if you are defending yourself from invasion. But there's other forms of offensive action that the Kellogg-Briand Pact allows. For example, I'm a Welsh boy and I live in England. I live in Oxford. Now, supposing there was a political situation where there was a very, very harsh government in England that persecuted Welsh people. I'd have to change my name. I couldn't call myself Emlyn Jones anymore. I'd have to change my name, call myself Ben Smith or something like that, and all other kinds of things. Luckily, I don't have a Welsh accent anyway, so I wouldn't have to cover it up. But supposing they found out who I was and tried to give me a hard time, kidnap my family, put me in a camp or something. Now, if there was a government in Wales that had an army, would it be justified in massing that army along the English border and saying, look, you are persecuting ethnic Welsh people in your country, and if you don't stop, because they're our citizens and we've issued them passports, we are going to enter your territory to protect them? Would they be justified in doing that? Because that's kind of how Putin sees it. Oh, anyway, we'll carry on. Australia's PM says Russian troops at peacekeeping is nonsense. Yeah, says the guy who locked down the entire country for God knows how long. Ukraine's president, our borders remain unchanged. That's an interesting point, because one of the things Putin says in this little article here, it's not a little, actually it's not a little article, it's a long, it's a big long read. But here it is anyway. It's from July the 12th, 2021. Oh, am I on screen share? No, I'll put them on the display cap. It's on the President of Russia website. There it is, en.kremlin.ru/president/news/66.181. En is English, I suppose. And this is an article by Vladimir Putin on the historical unity of the Russians and Ukrainians. He wrote this just a few months ago. Like I say, it goes on a long time. I wrote the second half of... I read out the second half of this, in the important bit, that is, in my show last Thursday. That's program 453 of the Hapanmo Show on Hapanmo Radio. And the first part just covers the history of Eastern Europe over the last 1,000 years or so. And he talks about the background to the whole situation. Then he talks about the Soviet Union. And in 1991, January, when Ukraine became independent from the Soviet Union, and he says, therefore, modern Ukraine is entirely a product of the Soviet era. And he goes, if you think that's arrogant of him or stuck up, well, just look at the history of it all. And this doesn't mean he's an anti-Ukrainian, Ukrainophobe, or whatever you call it. And he goes into more details in this article later on. But the important bit is, where is it? He goes into various reasons why he's taking this stance he does. And there's a very important bit I want to show you. I couldn't find it. I can't find it now. Oh well. But he honestly, this is what the BBC are not showing you. This sort of thing. The BBC doesn't show you this thing about why he's doing what he's doing, why he's saying what he's saying. It's trying the important bit. It's about halfway through. He says that modern Ukraine is entirely a product of the Soviet era. And then, basically, this is an important bit here. Of course, inside the USSR, borders between republics were never seen as state borders. They were nominal within a single country, which, while featuring all the attributes of a federation, was highly centralised. This, again, was secured more by the CPSU's leading role as Communist Party of the Soviet Union. But in 1991, all those territories and, which is more important, people found themselves abroad overnight, taken away this time from their historical motherland. And this is actually, of course, very important when it comes to Crimea, because, as I said earlier, the sovereignty of Crimea is not as simple as Ollie Bowler Hat Man thinks it is. Crimea has changed hands many times over the last couple of 100 years. It has a multi-ethnic population, and it became part of Ukraine almost because it was rubber stamped into the Ukrainian SSR in 1954. When, as I explained, it was just like a kind of bureaucratic shift, very similar to the the changing of the county boundaries in England in 1974. That's the only reason that Crimea is a part of modern Ukraine. It's almost potluck. And Putin's point is that pretty much you could say that for much of the rest of Eastern Europe. That a lot of the borders you see between the different nations are actually simply, these are essentially our political fictions. A lot of these states were created simply out of thin air. They were created simply within the territories designated by the borders of the old SSRs, that's the Soviet Socialist Republics. The Soviet Union was a federation, with different semi-autonomous or semi-self-governing regions, which, although all subordinate to Moscow and the CPSU, were allowed to organise their own affairs. These are called Soviet Socialist Republics. So it was very similar to the EU, except the SSRs had more independence than EU, what they call them, member states, and also the USSR was slightly less communist than the modern EU. But you see the analogy. The analogy he's using is these nations don't. The nations we see are not how they were meant to be. And I want us to read what he says at the end because it's very important. This is where you're not getting the full picture. And I'll go into what some of the Twitterati are saying later on. But he ends this. He ends it this way. Russia is open to dialogue with Ukraine and ready to discuss the most complex issues, but it is important for us to understand that our partner is defending its national interests but not serving somebody else's, and it's not a tool of someone else's hands to fight against us. Let's face it, that's what Ukraine has become, hasn't it? This is when they say the West, allies in the West. This is what I problem I had with Bowler Hatman, when that contradictory statement he made. You know, the global community must unite to prevent Russia building a sphere of influence. Well, what's the global community, Ollie, if not a sphere of influence? And he goes on, I know you don't need to see it now, but he says here, we respect the Ukrainian language and traditions. We respect Ukrainians' desire to see their country free, safe and prosperous. I am confident that true sovereignty of Ukraine is possible only in partnership with Russia. Now, that's slightly different. That's slightly different to what the BBC said he said. Because the BBC are claiming he says, Ukraine doesn't exist. It doesn't exist as... It's not a legitimate country. Well, that's not... That's a gross distortion of his actual position. He carries on. Our spiritual, human and civilizational ties, formed for centuries and have their origins in the same sources, they have been hardened by common trials, achievements and victories. Our kinship has been transmitted from generation to generation. It is in the hearts and memories of people living in modern Russia and Ukraine. Just as the blood ties millions of our families. That's ties that unite millions of our families. As I said, I've said this actually previously somewhere. There's so many people in Ukraine have Russian relatives. Mikhail Gorbachev was half Ukrainian. So was Nikolai, what's his name, Nikita Khrushchev. 2 Soviet premiers have been at least half Ukrainian. Together, we have always been and will be many times stronger and more successful, for we are one people. Today, these words may be perceived by some people with hostility, but goodness me, was he clairvoyant? They can be interpreted in many possible ways, yet many people will hear me, and I will say one thing. Russia has never been and will never be anti-Ukraine, and what Russia will be is up for its citizens to decide. That does not sound like someone who is opposed to Ukrainian sovereignty. Do read the article anyway, it's very interesting. Let's go back to this, let's get this news thread over with. We are not afraid. I'll go back to screen capture so you can see what I'm doing. Putin is daring Western leaders to trigger sanctions. The ordering of Russian troops into the People's Republics of Donetsk and Luhansk represent the further invasion. It is not yet the full-scale attack that many fear. Yet it's not clear yet whether this has even happened. We don't even know that yet. UN Security Council to meet at 0200 GMT. That's probably that'll be about 9 p.m. New York time. Okay, here's part 5. The Nord Stream pipeline. Yeah, Germany have now threatened. One of the biggest sanctions Russia has been threatened with in the event of invasion of Ukraine is the cancelling of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Well, dude, as I've explained, that's sort of underway. Unfortunately, that's kind of underway already. It happened, and I think this is something Putin is bound to have taken this into account. He's bound to, yeah. And Ukraine's foreign minister stresses the need for tough sanctions. He must know this is coming. He must know that he is going to face these sanctions. To be honest, as I've explained in my debate with Ollie, he's already faced decades of economic war. Especially in the last sort of 10 years or so, he's faced a massive economic war. Russia has the potential to be an economic giant. It could be have an economy, as Ollie said, the economy is the same size as Italy's, but it could be much bigger. The resources are there, the people are there. It could become an economic giant on the scale of China or the USA. US sends am I still on screen cap? Yeah. They've sent the remaining diplomats to Poland for security reasons. Will they be safe in Poland? UK plans significant sanctions over Russia. Asian stock dips sharply. Oh, there's going to be massive stock market repercussions for this. Prepare for more expensive petrol, guys. Prepare for more expensive fuel bills. And, of course, that means food's going to be more expensive. Putin has torn the Minsk agreement to shreds. So-called peacekeeping is a ploy, says the US ambassador to the UN. US to unveil more sanctions. China urges restraint on all sides. Now China is the one calling for restraint. Who's this masked menace? Russia accuses Ukraine of aggression. As I said to This is the Russia's ambassador. The country is a permanent member of the UN Security Council and argued the need to defend Russian-backed separatists from what he calls Ukrainian aggression. Bowler Hatman claims there's no welfare issue at all. No welfare problems at all for the ethnic Russians in Ukraine. Shock and determination. This is to defend peace in Europe. Stop Putin and his war. These are Ukrainian protesters in the streets. More evacuations, Australia this time. Russia is more predictable, a shameful act. That's all Biden's, what's his name, Blinken, Biden's Secretary of State. Russia's move to reorganise independence of the so-called republics controlled by its own proxies is a predictable, shameful act. We condemn them in the strongest possible terms. Stand with Ukraine. That's the latest hashtag. Oh, dearie me. This is latest developments on the Ukraine crisis. Putin has formally recognised the two states. He would send Russian troops into those regions. Putin says the troops will be completing peacekeeping. UN Security Council held an urgent late-night meeting. Diplomacy to avoid war. Russia's ambassador said the country was open to diplomatic solutions. He always has been. Putin's attended every negotiation, but he accuses Ukraine for escalating aggressions. Ukraine denies it. We'll come to Putin's speech later. He claims falsely that Ukraine has no history of being a true nation and that his country has been created by Russia. Not true, in his own words. That's not what he says. This is a long read, but it's worth reading. You may say, oh, well, he's lying here. Putin is lying in this article. And the BBC are telling the truth, aren't they? Really? He accuses Ukraine of being a puppet of the US and the Western military alliance. Oh, goodness me. Is that possible? Could that be? US is going to announce further measures on Russia on Tuesday, which is today. Let's keep going. This is in the morning here, early morning. Meeting of the Cobra committees underway in Downing Street. With wine and biscuits, no doubt. This is where they arrange the sanctions. I've seen the news about this. Russian invasion of Ukraine has already begun. Well, Russia's already sent in the tanks. The UK Health Secretary says Russia has sent tanks and troops into Ukraine. Sajid, why here? Why the Health Secretary? Why not the Defence Secretary? Why not the Foreign Secretary? Sadgit Jabvid told Sky News, "We're waking up to a very dark day in Europe. It's clear from what we have already seen and found out that Russia's President Putin has decided to attack the sovereignty of Ukraine and its territorial integrity." Oh, here we go. PM will give a statement in Parliament. Who's this? Oh, I'm not going to listen to this twat. And there's the map again. Russia's recognising the separatist claims, part 4. Seems we're nowhere near a diplomatic solution, says Jabvid. Where are Ukraine's regions Putin has recognised as independent? There you got the map again. EU sanctions against Russia expected this afternoon. It's probably been done by now because it's now 5:45. UK PM statement on Ukraine expected 12:30. We'll have a look at that in a minute. What does Putin want? Well, we know what you're saying he wants, but why don't you read the bloody article if you want to know what he wants? But you're journalists. You don't look at facts, do you? And here is Boris in the morning. UK sanctions will hit Russia very hard. I'm sure he's calculated. Putin must have calculated for this. He must be ready for it. How it's going to affect him, I don't know. Like a bid to run for UK president. Diplomatic solution with Putin is impossible, says the ex-ambassador. The former UK ambassador to Russia. Look at him. He's a big red-faced scowling git, isn't he? Can you see him? A diplomatic solution to the Ukraine crisis would be impossible as long as Vladimir Putin remains in power. Sir Andrew Wood told the BBC Putin cannot recognise what a diplomatic solution would be. Well, how come he's been to all the negotiations then? He had a very nice conversation with Olaf, what's his name, the German guy. A diplomatic solution would be... Oh, hang on. Oh, I'm going to read more of that. They're basically... Oil prices surge. There you go. Food's going to cost a lot more, guys. We should not hesitate to take action, UK Minister. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace says... a joint expeditionary force of the UK... Oh, God, we've heard that before, haven't we? Made up of defence ministers from the Baltic states and Nordic countries. He says the Putin's recognition of the two rebel-held regions is a worrying sign. Russian military equipment is moving into the region now. Show us the fake satellite photos, why don't you? We're worried what Putin has in mind. Oh, God. He's such a monster, isn't he? He eats kittens for breakfast. Russia is taking steps towards reviving the Soviet Union. This is what Bowler Hat Man said. What? This is beyond clown world. This is beyond clown world. Modern Russia, ironically, is the most powerful anti-communist force in the world. The Soviet Union was a political experiment based around Marxism-Leninism, created in the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917. The sort of like long march through the institutions, all the cultural Marxists and people like that who got into the West, they're the ones who essentially built a kind of soft-kill communism in this global community that Bolly loves so much. And Russia's now standing up to it. How can you possibly say that Putin wants to rebuild the Soviet Union? It's possible you could accuse... It'd be more accurate, although still unfair, to accuse him of wanting to rebuild the Russian Empire. Let's carry on. You don't need to see these. Russian has strained international law for years. They're like bad neighbours, aren't they? You know, Ukraine president calls for a halt to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Germany, of course, has obeyed. Ukraine breaking off diplomatic relations with Russia. Russia represents the threat to all of Europe. Right, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz says the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline cannot go ahead. Well, it's been in suspended mode now for a couple of years. What's the latest on the Ukraine crisis? This is 11:26. We're getting close to it now. Russia has ordered its troops into Moscow-backed separatist-controlled regions after declaring them independent states. The UK says this shows Russian President Vladimir Putin is bent on a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. No, it doesn't. The tanks aren't rolling towards Kiev, are they? I must admit, I didn't expect this to happen. I said many times that this wouldn't happen, didn't I? And I was wrong. Oh, I'll read Simon Parks' thing in a minute, but that's on Telegram. I'll do it now, actually, before I forget. Where is he? Simon Parks says here. I'll just get the deep state is on the run. This is the new article he's posted. This is the one. Deep state on the run. Putin looks all... Oh, there he is. Looks my intel was spot on. Late yesterday, 2 separate provinces in Ukraine were recognized by Putin as part of Russia. It is now legitimate for Russia to roll tanks into the 2 areas because their leaders have asked Russia to protect them. Under this cover, the deep state are on the run as their territory shrinks before their eyes. Thank you, Simon. Finally, somebody who kind of gets an idea of what's going on. It is the deep state. I mean, the Ukraine is. I mean, Putin doesn't use terms like deep state, but he does mention the EU and NATO are both products of the deep state. This all comes after Putin. I'm going back to the news now. Here we go. Went on television last night claiming Ukraine has no history of being a true nation. Well, I just read you from his own words what he what he really said. Invasion fears have an impact on the economy, of course. Russian stocks falling by 8%, oil and gas prices climbing. Yeah. At least we're in the northern hemisphere. We're coming out of winter now. We're entering spring. I wouldn't want this to be happening when we're going into winter, with heating bills and things like that being priority. Oh, what's this? The Champions League final, almost certain to move. Don't you mess with our football. Oops, hang on. Oh, let's go on to the next page, because so it's just like a scrolling down thing. UEFA almost certain to switch this season's Champions League final away from St. Petersburg as a result of the overnight developments of Russia being so evil. With sanctions against Russia seeming inevitable, the EU and UK government, UEFA, are viewed as highly unlikely to attempt to host a showpiece game in Russia. Yabu sucks to you, Russia. No, you're right. Page 3. I've got Theresa May's coming on again. And there's the map thing as well. What sanctions could be enforced? They could target companies and individuals linked to the Russian government. Does this mean RT is going to be banned from YouTube? Limit Russian firms' ability to raise capital on the London markets. Suggest that Western allies are looking into stopping Russian companies trading in pounds and dollars. What are they worth anyway? Western nations could include restricting exports to Russia, or excluding it from the SWIFT financial meeting. They've kind of been doing things a bit like this now for a long time. He'll unveil our first barrage of economic sanctions. Here's the scruffy head git. What's this? Oh, there's several people here, local people on the street, and who I feel very sorry for. These people. These are just residents of Kiev. I do feel sorry for these guys. UK summons the Russian ambassador. Goodness me. Stand outside the door until you get called in, naughty boy. He's no doubt got his cane. Bend over. Right, here we are now. Putin's flagrantly violated the peace agreements. Russian moves amount of renewed invasion. UK must brace itself for Putin's plan. Attempts at peace could be in vain. 5 Russian banks sanctioned. UK will begin imposing sanctions against Russia. As I said, this has been going on for a long time. I talked about the 2008 stock market crash, and then the crash in oil prices, which put 100,000 Canadian oil workers out of business. It's this kind of thing. Putin. One of the reasons Putin's not scared of this sort of thing is because he's been dealing with it for the last 15 years or so. Putin's plan must fail. Putin's plan to raise the devil Here's this grey-haired, greasy-haired old git. We must stand firm in support for Ukraine, although not for the victims of Jimmy Savile or the grooming gangs. Oh, and Julian Assange, of course. You stand firm in putting him in jail. A lot worse could come. We must end oligarch impunity. Well, funnily enough, it's Putin in his speech. I mean, we haven't come to that yet, but Putin in his speech says that Ukraine essentially is run by oligarch clans. More about sanctions. Oh, well, who's Theresa May? What the hell is she doing? Who wants to know what she thinks? What's she doing? She's on the back benches now, isn't she? Oh, Theresa May welcomes Boris Johnson's statement. His unwavering support for the Ukrainian people. Hashtag I stand with Ukraine. Boris Johnson calls for Russian actions in Ukraine to end. What did the PM say in his statement? Well, it's mostly stuff we've heard before. Putin violating Minsk peace agreements, deployment of force, denying Ukraine's legitimacy as a state. Well, he doesn't actually. He doesn't deny Ukraine's nationhood as a country. We must brace ourselves for the next possible stages. If the worst happens, then Ukraine will be a target for a full-scale war of aggression without a shred of justification. For the absurd and even mythical reasons Putin has described. He's talking about the history of Eastern Europe. Then he goes on to talk about his sanctions. Here's the map here. Ukraine, as you see, is the biggest country in Europe, actually. It's huge. It does sort of jut into Russia quite a lot, doesn't it? NATO could offer military support to Ukraine. Well, oh my goodness me. MP Tobias Elwood, Bilderberg Group. He's just been to the Bilderberg Group. Of course. This, people say, well, NATO, Ukraine is not a NATO member. Well, you couldn't get a closer fellow traveller than this, could you? Sanctions again. Details on Russia's sanctions. Starmer, dark day for Europe. A dark day for Europe would be when you got into government, mate, including these twats on either side of you, David Lammy and what's her name? Rebecca Wrong Daly, or whatever she's called. Both horrible, all horrible people. Of course, Starmer's been really chummy with Boris, hasn't he? He's just been backing him up against the rebels in his own party and the government. Sanctions don't go far enough. EU publishes sanction approval. We're defending our motherland as a Ukrainian soldier. Obviously, he's like an older guy, one of the Home Guard type people. UK facing growing axis of totalitarian states. Axis of evil, we've heard that before. Is this Ian Duncan Smith? Oh God, it's Ian Duncan Smith. What? I forgot he even existed. It's like bloody Tony Blair. Tony Blair comes out of the woodwork and everybody want to bring in some kind of big brother authoritarian state. It was he who first proposed the vaccine passports. And then Ian Duncan Smith, another former leader of opposition. Again, we don't hear from him for ages and suddenly he pops up his evil head. He was the guy who brought in Atos, the work for your benefits kind of thing for sick people. And Theresa May, all these old has-beens that no one's heard of for ages are coming out. Russian moves unjustified, says European defence ministers. European defence ministers. I should expect the ministers will soon turn into a minister. Remember the defence, the defence agreement that Caroline Stevens talked about. And here's some people. These are people from Rostov, which is near the border. It's in Russia, but it's near the border with Ukraine, and they are actually supporting their president. And these two people here. There's lots of others as well. Russia's not planning to send in troops for now. It's all this talk about invasion, because the word invasion has been used several times, hasn't it? Europe must be less dependent on Russian gas, says Liz Truss. Oh, you're going to bring back fracking, are you? I bet they'll use this. They will use this as a pretext to bring back fracking. Poor Ian R. Crane must be turning in his grave. Lots of more talk about sanctions there. Who's this? Kenya's ambassador to the UN has condemned Russia as well. Martin Kimani said, oh. So, several other African countries are back in the global community. Belarus plans to bury jets and weapons for Russia. Oh, bye. Belarus is they're his only friend in the world, I think. Erdogan tells Zelensky he opposes Russia's move to Turkey as well. US calls Russia actions the beginning of an invasion. Oh, it's a beginning of invasion now, is it? It's a beginning of an invasion. Finally, we're on the front page, I think. G7 leaders condemn Russia's move. Oh, these are people who live in Kiev. This is Tamara. This is he's a Russian guy. I read this earlier actually. He's a Russian guy, but his son lives in Kiev and speaks Ukrainian. And he's going to stay in Kiev though. He's not leaving. I feel sorry for these people. I do. I don't want them to be in this situation. Now, Putin has asked the legislators for permission to use the force outside Russia. This is important. He wants to clear it with the Duma, the parliament. I heard he said this before. Oh, what's this? Is Russia staging false flag incidents? The US has warned Russia of faking provocative acts, so-called false flag incidents, which are staged to appear to come from one side in the conflict in order to create a pretext for invasion. You can almost read between the lines, the massive text, can't you? 9/11. But we don't talk about that, do we? Among rumours circulating on social media are a number of alleged attacks. A video circulated on Telegram, run by a Telegram channel. Oh, so Telegram are not bad now, are they? Because they're run by Russian-backed separatists. I thought Telegram was supposed to show any lies. It supposedly shows a clash between an enemy sabotage group and pro-Russian forces. But open-source investigators on social media pointed out several discrepancies, indicating the video was shot in early days and had been manipulated. Oh, we've got more news coming now. It's not, I think it was Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals. Sargon of Akkad talked about them. Always accuse your enemy of what you plan to do. Russia's Deputy Defense Minister left with no choice. Parliament green lights for deployment of forces. Oh, right, yeah. The upper house of Russia's parliament has voted unanimously in favour of giving President Putin authority to deploy armed forces abroad. It formally allows Putin to send troops into the Donbass. Right. So he has the backing of the Duma. Oh, Biden to address the nation. This is going to be funny. Oh, 1800. He must be doing it now. Oh my goodness me. What should we do? Oh. Shall I stop right now and let's go watch old Beijing Joe, shall we? Is it going to be that enthralling? Putin says Minsk peace deal no longer exists. Vladimir Putin's TV seats. Oh, wow. It's been fact-checked. Hold your horses, everyone. Strap yourselves in. The fact-checkers have gone through this 45-minute speech by Putin so that you don't have to. Let's just go. We're at the top now, I think. There we go. Down in case. Down a little bit. Where are we now? Putin says Ukraine should renounce NATO aims. I mean, technically he can't stop them joining NATO if he wants to, if they want to, but I wish they wouldn't. Yeah. Putin talks of Ukraine's nuclear ambition. Oh yeah, wouldn't be surprised if they just give them nukes. Yeah. NATO chief warns of false flag operations. Oh, Stoltenberg, former Norwegian Prime Minister. Jens Stoltenberg. No, he's not German. He's Norwegian, but he's a long-term Bilderberg Group member. Hungary to deploy troops at the border with Ukraine. Oh, no, Hungary as well. Oh, hang on, Hungary is supposed to be based. Germany's big decision on Russian gas, which a decision they made months ago. Kremlin regrets the suspension of Nord Stream 2 certification. They knew that was going to happen because Let's see. In case you're just joining us, all right, it's just a recap. What we've got now. EU sanctions to target Russian lawmakers and banks. It's Roman Abramovich facing sanctions. Well, he didn't bloody drop that guy. Who's that twat who kicked his cat? Who's it? The footballer kicks cat. What's the name of that? What is his name? Kurt Zuma. Shocking video of his... Yep. Oh, sorry, no, he's for West... Apologies. Sorry, Roman, my man. He plays for West Ham. Not your fault. He's facing sanctions, is he? The Prime Minister replied, Abramovich is facing sanctions. Oh, right. Well, Abramovich has so much money, I don't think he needs to worry about that. Russia to evacuate diplomatic staff from Ukraine. Biden expected to announce sanctions. Where is that? Where is he then? Hang on, we got live video here. Let's have a look.
Hour or so later, but it's been brought forward after hearing from NATO's Secretary General and also from the Russian President. Now, I mentioned NATO's Secretary General.
Oh, we're not going to hear Biden. What's this? Let's listen to.
Plainly, President Putin has now violated Ukrainian sovereignty. He's sent troops in. He's broken international law.
Well, he hasn't yet. He has given them all the authority for offensive operations, though, but he's not actually done it yet.
He's repudiated the Minsk agreements and torn up the understanding from Budapest in 1994 that Ukraine's territorial integrity would be respected. He's completely torn up international law. We will immediately institute a package of economic sanctions, which I think, as people would expect, targeted not just at entities in Donbass, in Luhansk and Donetsk, but in Russia itself, targeting Russian economic interests as hard as we can. And I'll be setting out a bit later on in the House of Commons what we are going to do. This is, I should stress, just the first barrage of UK economic sanctions against Russia, because we expect, I'm afraid, that there is more Russian irrational behaviour to come. And the sad thing is that at every turn in this crisis, the UK's pessimistic predictions have been vindicated. We said that there would be false flag operations, and there have been false flag operations. We said that there would be provocations in the Donbass, and that's exactly what we're now seeing. And I'm afraid all the evidence is that President Putin is indeed bent, as you said just now, on a full-scale invasion of Ukraine and the overrunning, the subjugation of an independent, sovereign European country.
What happened to that man? I know I've said this before many times, and I've lamented this many times before. What the hell happened to him? Is this the guy who was, get Brexit done? I'd rather be dead in a ditch. Look at him now. Listen to him. Listen to him parroting these lines that you hear from all of these globalist hacks. He's just merged seamlessly back into the establishment. I just don't get it. Oh, anyway, let's go to the home page. So that's the position we're in now. This is how it was, as Walter Cronkite used to say. US and UK warn of beginning of Ukraine invasion. Germany halts pipeline. PM announces sanctions against Russia. Well, that's it. Well, guys, let's have a look at what the Twitterati are saying. Let's have a look. I'll go through my hate follows. Hang on. I'll start with Owen Jones. What's he saying? Now I'll show you this. I just have to make sure my PMs were shut on my DMs. Socialist anti-fascist Guardian columnist. Funny how people used to say columnist and now they say columnist. Author, podcaster, YouTuber, geriatric millennial. I think he's nearly 40, but he looks like a little kid. I wonder what you could just imagine what the painting in his attic looks like. where we are now. Tories. Anyway. Because the Tory party is dependent on funding from oligarchs linked to the Putin regime. This is just Elgert. Tory MPs scratching their heads today at how the UK went from being hardliner on Ukraine to having some of the weakest sanctions announced today. When the reverse has been true of Germany, something's not quite lining up. Well, are they having like competitions now about who can be put in the hardest sanctions on Russia? I mean, Boris sounded. I mean, you know what I think about this. This is kind of something. This is like an upscaling of a process that's been going on for ages. Let's have a little go through a bit more. Staff at university on strike. He talks about lots of different things. Finally, he says something here I agree with. The thing is, unlike, say, Iraq or Afghanistan or Libya, nobody seriously supports an actual war with Russia. The nuclear obliteration of human civilization is too high a price for most. And so despite all the bluster, everyone supports some sort of peaceful solution. Well, you can't deny that. You can't. It is unnerving, though, when this sort of thing goes on. I mean, I don't think anyone really wants this to escalate. I don't know anyone who thinks that they're glad this happened, that this went this far. I'm not. I'm not glad that this military action is taking place. What I am saying, all my position is simply, are we supposed to point at Putin and say it's his fault and we're the good guy? Not me. The globalists are the good guys. That's the question I'm asking here. I don't want there to be a war, goodness knows, especially like you say when there's nuclear weapons. Where is he? He made a tweet last night. It was particularly obnoxious. Where is it? Where is it? Try to keep your car. Excuse me. Oh, here we go. And this is his classic. This is a classic bit of Owen Jones. This is. Vladimir Putin is a right-wing autocrat who has won admirers on the alt-right for good reasons. Bigotry and chauvinism are hallmarks of his regime, and he intends Russian domination over peoples who do not want it. An enemy of democracy, self-determination, and the left. I mean, does that sound to you like a rational person? Does that sound to you like somebody who is fair-minded, analytical? It doesn't to me. All right, I'm gonna let's see what's happening now. RT hasn't been banned yet from YouTube. Let's just refresh and see if there's any new videos because I was watching this earlier today. Moscow under sanctions. Why Putin doesn't want NATO in Ukraine. Oh, this is interesting. Look. This is... what are we supposed to wait for? Putin on... Let's have a look at this.
Managing teams remotely has never been...
Ads. But this is where you get the other side. Look, it says here, this is funny, RT is funded in whole or part by the Russian government. What was that? Oh, bloody hell. Bugger off. I didn't click. That wasn't a link. Hang on. Here we go.
That they had no plans of
I should just point out, it's interesting that, look, you have RT is funded in whole or part by the Russian government. I might have made this point before, but no one ever says that about the BBC, do they? You never see that. You never see that about the BBC. It doesn't say the BBC is a state-owned corporation funded entirely by the TV licence and other parts of the exchequer. Sorry, Mr. President, continue.
Implementing these agreements. They didn't want to, so what else was left to say? And they have stated that publicly. So what we were supposed to wait for? To wait that the people will be tortured, that this genocide will continue. Those people who live in those territories, it is impossible to continue to look at it idly.
What has life been like for those people? I mean, Bowler Hat Man says there's no welfare concerns at all for the Donetsk and Luhansk people. But Putin says there are.
we couldn't stand it any longer. That's the extent of it. Our colleagues from Europe, our counterparts, when we talked to them, they said the same thing. Yes, that's the path to follow, but they couldn't force them, their partners from the current leadership of Ukraine, to do this. So we were forced to make that decision. And in this sense, yes, the Minsk agreements, they don't exist. So why should they be implemented if we recognize these republics now?
Oh, I get it, because the Minsk agreements were... Part of the Minsk agreements was that couldn't happen. I get it. Okay, I get it. So the next bit is, we're ready to fulfill our obligations on the use of force. Or I think that says force, but let's have a look.
And about the use of the armed forces abroad?
Yeah.
Well, how else? Yesterday we signed the agreements, and these agreements with both Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic, it has articles that say that we are going to help these republics, including with the military. And since there is a conflict with this decision, we make it clear. If need be, we are ready to assume the obligations, exercise the obligations we assumed.
Okay, so what's this here? The best solution right now is what? Let's have a look.
Those who have any doubt,
The best solution right now is for Kiev authorities to refuse joining NATO, and they spell Kiev right as well. Obviously, it's, as I said, it's up to them. But let's hear what the president says.
Think that they are democracies, they should recognize this, because that's the highest form of democracy, a referendum. And we have said that publicly a lot of times, and that's the matter that we debate a lot about with Washington and with NATO. We are categorically against admitting Ukraine to NATO because it poses a threat to us, and there is an argument, and I have talked about that in this very hall a lot of times. And in this regard, we come from the assumption, and a lot of people talk about this in Western capitals as well, that the best solution for this matter would be if our Western counterparts could save their face, so that the current Kiev authorities renounce from joining NATO by themselves, by their own will, and they would remain neutral.
Okay, so what's this? Russia never. What's this? What's this? There's that one. It says Russia never said our troops going into Donbass right now. Okay, so this is. I've made this point, haven't I?
First off, I didn't say that right now after this.
His voice keeps changing because, of course, this is dubbing. This is an English translator speaking over him. I probably prefer that to subtitles, simply because of my eyesight. I don't have my reading glasses just yet.
Conversation, we will have Russian forces march into the two republics. Secondly, it is impossible to predict the scenario that will unfold. That will depend on the situation on the ground. Now, as to whether issues could be resolved through force and whether you can use force and stay on the side of good, would you like to say that good forces should be helpless or defenseless? Good should not be defenseless. Good should be able to defend itself. And that is our position. Thank you.
Okay, so that's an important point, actually. You know, there is a role for the legitimate use of force in politics, yeah. Why Putin doesn't want NATO to join Ukraine. We know about the Moscow under sanctions thing. They'll make this the last one.
According to our information about Ukraine's accession to NATO, the issue is a foregone conclusion. We understand that under such a scenario, the level of the military threat against Russia will multiply.
At least this translator has an English accent. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. Sorry, I'll go back to the beginning and start again, sorry.
Information about Ukraine's accession to NATO, the issue is a foregone conclusion. We understand that under such a scenario, the level of the military threat against Russia will multiply. The risk of an attack on our country will increase many times over. Enshrined in US strategic planning documents is the possibility of a preemptive strike against enemy missile systems. And who is that enemy? Russia. In NATO documents, our country is officially declared the main threat to North Atlantic security, and Ukraine would serve as a springboard for a strike. Following the United States' withdrawal from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, the Pentagon is openly developing a range of ground-based offensive weapons, including ballistic missiles capable of reaching a distance of up to 5,500 kilometers. If such systems are deployed in Ukraine, they will be able to hit targets anywhere in European Russia, and even across the Ural Mountains. For a Tomahawk missile, the approach time to Moscow would be 35 minutes. Ballistic missiles from Kharkov could reach it in 7 to 8 minutes, and it would take 4 to 5 minutes for hypersonic offensive missiles to strike. It's like a knife at our throats. I have no doubt that they want to implement these plans, as they have been doing in all previous years, expanding NATO to the east, moving military infrastructure and equipment towards Russia's borders. They have completely ignored our concerns, protests and warnings. They simply didn't care and have done whatever they wanted.
Okay, guys. So there you have the position from RT. We've done the BBC, now we've done RT. So I hope I've given you a good spread of political positions in this particular commentary. I am, as I said, I am partisan in this. I am not. I'm going to deny that I feel Russia has been treated unfairly in this, and I do not support the global community's position on this entire debacle, this crisis. But I really do hope, and I don't think there's anyone who hopes otherwise, that this calms down, this de-escalates, and a peaceful solution could be found. But based on what the president just said, I mean, describes it as being like a knife to their throats, and I've said this before, and there's a link into the description box to my Russophobia live stream, and there's several other articles as well, and my talk with Dr. Nick Colostrom about the Nord Stream pipeline. This knife has been there for a long time, and I think he's had enough of it. If you want to watch Putin's speech, I'm not going to go through it. What you just heard was a clip from that speech, but the speech can be found here on Sky News
of the oligarchs
with a talkover. In full, Russian presidents address the nation. It's a 45-minute speech. I've not watched all of it yet. I'll watch the rest of it, and if there's anything I can add, I'll make another video on this subject. I'm going to make this a wrap on this particular video and upload it. Sorry, I can't do a live stream tonight, but I will maybe do one this weekend, depending on what happens. But thank you all of you for watching Hapanwo TV. Hospital Port as pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order.